Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Today we'll talk about the personality of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and its relevance to the modern world and to the youth. Lives of great men and great women and great minds serve to inspire the future generations. History, however, is replete with examples where great men, women, and minds were used as an excuse for intellectual, academic, political, social, cultural, and scientific inertia. The personalities of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Allama Muhammad Iqbal also were not analyzed and given input to in terms of learning from their iconoclastic, perseverant, and struggled attributes. Today we'll discuss the Quaid-e-Azam's personalities knack with iconoclastic aspect. Iconoclastic would mean that he did not accept anything only because it was a cherished tradition, only because it was customary, only because it was done by his elders or suggested by his elders. He frequently used the word hard knocks, which his father had said to him in his early childhood. One example of this habit of or this style of going his own way can be seen from this extract, which is from My Brother, the book written by Fatima Jinnah, Madare Millat. And Fatima Jinnah writes, Fati, as you say, you are right. I should have consulted specialists earlier, but I'm not sorry. Man can only struggle. The tongue of destiny is always mute. I will stand post as long as I can. My principle has always been never to blindly accept the advice of, and then there is a dot. I have always followed my own will and learnt by hard knocks. Only a few months before his death, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah had said to the students of Islamic College, Peshawar, you will learn from your costly experience and the knocks that you have received during your lifetime. According to Fatima Jinnah, to go his own way and to learn by hard knocks, that had been the dominant keynote of his character throughout his life. As a matter of fact, the conversation he had in his youth with his illustrious father, Jinnah Punja, when the old man confronted him about his lack of performance in school, especially in arithmetic. Father, I don't like to go to school. His father asked, then what would you do? Mr. Jinnah replied, I would like to sit with you in office and learn to do business. His father tried his best to dissuade the young man from his desire in all possible ways. The last threat was that if you go to office with me, you will not have time to play. And Jinnah was, as a sportsman, very fond of games. So he thought that in this manner, Jinnah will be dissuaded from his resolve. But Mr. Jinnah replied, I don't mind. His father confronted him once again when after some time he found about the lack of Mr. Jinnah's interest in business. And Mr. Jinnah replied, Father, I don't like the office work. His father asked, what would you do then? Mr. Jinnah said, I would like to go back to school. The father said, you see, my boy, There are only two ways of learning in life. One is to learn from the wisdom and experience of your elders and superiors in knowledge. And Mr. Jinnah asked, and what is the other way to learn? His father replied, the other way is to go your own way and to learn by making mistakes and to learn by hard knocks and kicks in life. Fatma Jinnah writes, the boy listened attentively. This incident explains the characteristic of the Qaid, who up to the last days of his life preferred to go his own way. He had been, as we see, sent to England to pursue business, but at the age of 17, we see him enrolled as a candidate for Barrister of Law qualifications at Lincoln's Inn. As soon as his father learned from his son that he had joined the Lincoln's Inn, he wrote him a very unhappy letter and insisted that he should immediately stop the study. This he thought that is not a profitable profession and he should return to India. Mr. Jinnah replied, pleaded rather, that he will try even to afford his own expenses, but he should be allowed to complete his program, the license program of the Bar at Law, which he completed. And when he came back, he enrolled at Bombay High Court as a legal attorney. This proved not an easy course. It was, according to Fatima Jinnah, heart-breaking ordeal. In her words, she writes, it was like scaling a steep and difficult mountain. The grip of his feet slipping at every step. The young man, with a proud look in his eyes, walked up and down the corridors of many courts, giving one the impression of being a leading legal luminary, but in fact desperately in need of his first brief. He lived in majestic isolation and poverty. It proved bad enough to be enrolled as barrister in the Bombay High Court, to go around the court daily as if it were a religious routine, and to return to his cramped up room in Apollo Hotel in Bombay in the evening without having earned a single rupee for months. But when the irksome months lengthened into, this is what Madam Fatma Jinnah writes, but when the irksome months lengthened into 3 agonizing years, he felt really miserable. There was his father and family in Karachi who were facing difficulties and were facing litigations. And here was Mr. Jinnah not been able to find a single brief, a single case. Disappointed and frustrated, he showed a stiff chin to the world outside. But within his heart, in words of Fatma Jinnah, gnawed the rancor of an unsatisfied yearning. In spite of the difficult circumstances that he was going through, he kept up social contacts, frequenting some of the best clubs of Bombay and very often a guest in parties of the elites of Bombay. In his early 20s, he was an extremely attractive young man, Fatma Jinnah writes, tall, of commanding personality, a pair of small but penetrating eyes that bespoke of a shrewd intellect, a face with a sharp Grecian profile, long limbs, impeccably dressed, with a bearing and poise of a born leader of men. Nature had endowed him with charm and personality, but society had refused to supply him the things which were needed, the material goods that were needed for such a towering personality to survive, and that could enable him to make a comfortable living. While those that rubbed shoulders with him in the days of his struggle recognized him a young man full of promise. Little did they know how empty his pockets were. But when he was appointed an honorary magistrate by Sir Charles Ollivant for 1500 rupees a month, the first appointment, the salary is not necessarily in my mind, but he was offered, after the first appointment, temporary appointment was over, and he was offered 1500 rupees job, judicial appointment by Sir Charles Ollivant. Mr. Jinnah refused that, and he told him that I would earn that much of an amount in a day. A hard and heartbreaking struggle was over. It had failed to dim the brilliance of his self-confidence, nor had it shaken his belief in pursuing a life of complete independence, unbending and unyielding to patronage from his seniors and bullying from his superiors. Today's youth is faced with as many daunting and unnerving challenges as was the youth of the first quarter of the last century. And there is this message in the effort, in the struggle that Quaid-e-Azam made for our youth, that शौक की राह पर अगर चलिए, बकौले जॉन एलिया, शौक की राह पर अगर चलिए, चार जानिब से बेखबर चलिए. Similarly, we have the example of Allama Muhammad Iqbal, who when proceeded, he came from a middle class family, or rather even more disadvantaged background he had. His brother, Sheikh Ata Muhammad, was a government servant in the lower middle tier of arrangements. And we see that his brother certainly had borrowed huge amounts to facilitate his studies abroad. And when his brother came to know of the news that Allama Muhammad Iqbal had completed Bharat law, so he requested him, he sent him a letter and asked him to return, so that the loans that had been borrowed from, the money that had been borrowed from different people could be returned. Allama Muhammad Iqbal replied that, no sir, I am proceeding for a PhD to Germany, and as soon as I receive some more money from you, I'll immediately leave London and proceed to Germany for to the Munich University. The important lesson again is Allama Iqbal's perseverance, Allama Iqbal's consistency, that वही बात के शौक की राह पर अगर चलिए, चार जानिब से बेखबर चलिए, कि अल्लामा इकबाल did not take into consideration the societal limitations, the economic or financial difficulties that the family was in, because he knew that after he graduates from the German University, Munich, he will be one of the leading, and that was a fact that in 1908 he was one of the very few highly educated and highly professionally acclaimed professionals and individuals. And his effort, his perseverance actually enabled the Muslims of India to claim a place of dignity, of honor, of respect in the Comity of Nations. So, and we need to learn from the lessons of Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah and Allama Iqbal,